This podcast may contain disturbing content for some listeners. It's intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. This is True Crime XS.
All right, we in time, I don't know where this is going to fall. We've been covering Louisiana stuff overall. The impetus for that has been this guy that calls into Howard Stern. Our audience seems to have dropped off on this, so I'm going to probably put this episode in while I go do some hunting on the serial killer known as Clay. I am going to do a couple episodes that we've already recorded on Russell Elwood and Vic Gant, and we may do a little more work there, you and I. This is interesting to me. I don't know if it'll be interesting to you, but
you said the audience has dropped off, like they're not interested in it.
I think there's something wrong with the analytics because like they have been in a weird place. So I'm having a hard time. Like not a lot of people have talked to me about this. Usually I get a message or two about the episodes we're doing. It's still in a position where if we were in a room with the entire audience, it would be weird. It'd be a large space, but it's a little less on the last two episodes. And until I get the analytics question answered, I wanted to have like a way to veer that direction.
I was just curious. Yeah, no, I don't.
I think
look into any of that stuff. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so we have a large audience. They don't all come at the same time, but I can measure how an episode is going to perform over the year and how many thousands of downloads it's going to get based on like how it does initially. Because I don't have a lot of people really close to me that just listen to the podcast. Most of them listen much later.
Yeah, I don't have it. Nobody even knows I do a podcast.
That's also funny to me because it's not something I don't do a lot of advertising or anything like that. We sort of naturally have built a smaller audience, and I like it that way.
Right, because so I have there are very, very few people who have any idea that I do a podcast. Isn't that funny? It is funny.
Yeah, it's weird because I've never wanted, like the true crime thing, there's so many true crime podcasts right now. It's sort of this thing where everybody's doing it to the point that Hulu is even making fun of it with The Only Murder in the Building. I don't know if you've seen that, but it is.
Well, and I have an appreciation for that show and for people. For one thing, kudos to anybody who can actually get a podcast together and do a semi good job because it's hard work. It's very hard work. And it, the ones that take it on and it's just like this passing hobby, if it's any good, they must just be like super whizzes on, editing stuff. But you've done all the production on this podcast. We have, I don't even know 90 episodes.
Yeah, I don't know what is in the feed. We've recorded 100. I don't know how many we've
I
released.
would say that we, whatever it is, they are well thought out for the most part, interesting, and I would say, they're authentic. And then from my perspective, they're original. I'm not saying that doesn't mean there's nothing out there like it. I'm just saying if there is, I haven't heard it.
Yeah, I mean, some of the cases we cover, other people cover. And
there's only so many cases in true crime.
Correct. And that's,
there's going to be repetition there.
And I always have, with the Clay and Russell Elwood thing, that's a pretty good example of I like to have a new spin on things. And I thought more people would be into it. And if not, that's okay. This is, I'm going to do an end of summer wrap up and I'm still going to cover the Russell Elwood stuff because it's interesting.
I'm covering it because it's fascinating. I do care that people aren't interested, but you should be interested in this. It's really weird that anybody who follows true crime wouldn't be. Isn't it?
So, yeah, it is. I mean,
Do you think maybe it was, so is a 17-minute segment listening to like a caller, is that annoying to people?
I think it might be the age of it. Like, there's something about the age of the cases that, like, you have to hit a sweet spot. Like, I'll point out from just the production perspective. When we did the first 26 episodes that were, designed around Israel Keys, and then the later episodes, I think we covered maybe 6 or 7 more after that. But the first 26 was like a 300 or 400 page document and series of supporting documents, and then voluminous files that, like, not everybody had, but a couple of other podcasters and journalists had gotten. That was one thing. What we've done since then in the other cases is largely, each week when we do a show, you would do show notes starting at a certain point. I would pick out cases and just sort of run with those. It is complicated to put all of those things together in a way that I think people would want to listen to them. And the truth is, I really did this podcast for me. I had not heard a podcast that sort of told stories the way I would want to hear them. So I thought there might be some other people out there. And I got some good advice that, like, if you follow the podcast analytics and you gauge it by the number of people in a room it would take, like, how big of a room would it take for your audience? And we started out where it was like a classroom. We constantly had a classroom. And then we moved to an auditorium. So a classroom, I think of like 30 people. Then an auditorium, I think of like 200 people. Then we moved to what would be a concert hall. And we sort of stayed in the concert hall. We occasionally, the episodes themselves get to stadium level, but they don't get to stadium level right away.
Right. Well, because somebody hears one episode and they're like, I like that. And they go back and listen from the beginning or whatever. And see, that's what I don't know anything about this. Like, you just now saying that, like, there was a whole book about like our 26 episodes of Israel Keys. That's not how I remember that at all.
I sent you the script.
Because, well, I wasn't reading from it.
No. I just mean,
because I did, like, you would be like, we're going to talk about this. And I would, like, do tons of research and then, like, we would talk about it.
Right. I guess my point is that, like, there was originally this one, like, idea in my head. And that was the Where the Bodies Are Buried script was like hundreds of pages. And then you're right, we used those cases and did other research. But my point is that sort of was a common theme. And I wonder if when we diverge from that, it sort of potentially damages.
Hit or miss.
Yeah, it's hit or miss on it. But so today, what I wanted to do, like, we did this with the holiday wrap ups last year. This is some of our more our most listened to and downloaded episodes. People listening to them many multiples of times from all over the world. I'm doing sort of a summer wrap up, but I'm doing it in the middle of the Clay serial killer case. And those are cases where we just kind of talk about what's going on in true crime. One of the things I wanted to point out was that was interesting to me. There was a guy, and I don't know if you know this story or not. It's from a case from July of 1996. And it's a Louisiana case. A guy named Damon Thibodeau. He was 22 years old and he worked as a deckhand in 1996. And his cousin by marriage or step cousin, Crystal Champagne, was killed in July of 1996. She was strangled to death. He was wrongfully convicted of the murder of his cousin. He spent 15 years on death row. He was in solitary confinement the entire time at Angola. And on September 28th of 2012, he was exonerated through DNA testing. And here's that story. Crystal Champagne left her family's West Wego, Louisiana apartment in July 1996. She was going to the mall. She didn't return home as expected, and her family began a search for her. The search ended the following evening when her body was discovered along the levee in Bridge City. A piece of red extension cord had been wrapped around her neck, and in addition, her shirt was pulled over her chest, and her shorts were pulled down, suggesting a possible sexual assault as the motive. Thibodeau, Damon Thibodeau, he first became a suspect because of his familial relationship with Champagne. He initially denied any involvement in the crime, and he agreed to take a polygraph. He was informed after the polygraph that he had failed it. After many hours of interrogation, he gave a recorded statement confessing to consensual and non-consensual sex with the victim, to beating her and murdering her. There was a total of 9 hours of this interrogation, but for some reason they only recorded 54 minutes. Thibodeau's confession was inconsistent with the crime in so many ways. He stated he used a white or gray speaker wire that he had pulled out of his car to strangle Champagne, although it was a red cord. Forensic examiners could find no evidence of semen in the victim's body. A detective theorized that a sexual assault still could have occurred, and that this is like one of those where they were basically said her body had been out long enough that the insect activity had consumed and degraded the evidence.
Yeah, that happens a lot in Louisiana.
There were 2 witnesses testifying they saw someone pacing near the body was found, and they selected Thibodeau from what's known as a photo array or a 6-pack. They identified him in court. Despite any physical evidence linking Thibodeau to this murder, he was convicted and he was sentenced to death row in Louisiana, almost entirely based on that confession. Well, in 2007, there was a post-conviction investigation. The Jefferson Parish District Attorney's Office initiated a joint investigation with the Innocence Project and the rest of Thibodeau's legal team. There were several forensic experts who concluded that there was no physical evidence connecting Thibodeau to the murder, and that contrary to Thibodeau's statement, that the victim did not have signs of having been sexually assaulted. There was DNA on the cord nearby, which tested positive for blood, and it was male DNA, but it was not Thibodeau's DNA. The eyewitnesses who identified Thibodeau as the man they had seen pacing near the crime scene stated they, in fact, had already seen Thibodeau's photo in the news media before they'd ever been exposed to the identification process or the procedures related to the photo arrays or the 6-packs. Moreover, they stated that the sighting had occurred the day after the body was found, when Thibodeau was already in custody. The reinvestigation further confirmed that Thibodeau's confession was false in every single significant aspect. The prosecution's own expert concluded prior to the original trial that Thibodeau's confession was useless. He had falsely confessed based on fear of the death penalty, but that information was never shared with the defense. And District Attorney Paul Connick Jr., he joined the Innocence Project, the Capital Post-Conviction Project of Louisiana, and the law firm of Frederickson and Byron in agreeing to overturn Thibodeau's conviction and death sentence. He was released in September of 2012 after 15 years on death row and a total of 16 years of wrongful incarceration. He became the 300th person exonerated through DNA testing in the United States. And after the exoneration, Thibodeau moved to Minnesota and began working at Frederickson and Byron, which was the law firm that helped to exonerate him. He earned his high school diploma. He was an active speaker for wrongful conviction reform, and he told his story through Innocence Project events and other organizations' events around the country. He said in an interview with KARE NBC of Minnesota, the best part of his day, no matter how good the rest of his day was, when he woke up every morning and he did not see the bars. So why am I bringing him up? One, he's in Louisiana. That was sort of a big deal. He spent, he was the 142nd person released from death row, the 300th person that was exonerated by DNA in 2012. On September 28th of this year, it would have been his 9-year exoneration anniversary. But he died of COVID-19 yesterday. And I thought that was sort of a big deal, that he had passed away.
That sucks.
Yeah. So yeah, that's,
But I want like that. So everything you just said, like, yes, we are talking about Louisiana. I feel like there's a whole lot more probably to be sort of hashed out there, because I have a real problem with, the 9 hours of confession with 54 minutes of it available for review. It makes one think like, well, this was standard practice. Like, a couple of detectives or investigators or whomever has the case, they don't just come up with this tactic like willy-nilly, right?
Correct.
The only thing I would say to them, to any investigator who has gotten a confession like these investigators got out of him, would be like, how do you feel like you did your job? Like, how do you, yes, you got this innocent man convicted, but at a certain point, I don't see how they live with themselves. And if that's the way that they're going to accomplish things, I feel like they would be much better off doing something else with their life, because they're ruining other people's lives. And I don't see what the point of it is. You're not actually solving anything. You're ruining someone else's life. And the person who did it is still out there. And I feel like that happens over and over again because it's so much easier to make what you have work than to go out and find what you don't have readily available, which would be like the actual perpetrator. And so it burns me up to think about, okay, so yes, I get that like a murderer isn't going to confess just for the sake of confessing. In fact, I would say like most of the time, if there is a confession, it's probably coerced and it's probably not the person who actually did it. I mean, that's not going to be the case 100% of the time, but anything where you're hearing this like 9-hour interview that results in a 54-minute, taped version of the story, like they coerced him into doing that. And it just so happens there was evidence. On the show, controversially, I said that the fact that Scott Peterson was sent to death row in California without any physical evidence linking him to the murder of his wife, Lacey Peterson, and his unborn son, Connor. The fact that he was convicted and sentenced to death row without physical evidence should scare everybody, okay?
Yeah.
Now, his case was highly publicized, and I'm not saying anything about his guilt or innocence here. I'm just talking about the logistics of the case and how it kind of went down. Okay, well, this is another not so well-known case where an innocent man was sentenced to die in Louisiana. And now I'm not entirely certain. I know the death penalty waxes and wanes over time. With Scott Peterson, essentially he was sentenced to sit on death row because there was a moratorium on the death penalty.
Yeah.
All that's going to change though because of other stuff happening in that case, and it's all logistics, right? It has nothing to do with his actual guilt or innocence. But in this case in Louisiana, now Louisiana is an interesting state, and you probably know more about this than I do, but you can actually be sentenced to hard labor in Louisiana. Did you know that?
I did.
And I don't know like exactly what that means. I don't know that, it's enforced. It's barbaric and archaic to hear it, right? I mean, really, because you think about the chain gang, basically, right? I mean, that's what hard labor was. It was, prisoners out there busting rocks or whatever they did. I don't know. And so in Louisiana, I imagine, you said he was the 300th person exonerated through scientific evidence as not being guilty of the crime he was convicted for.
Correct.
And that was across the United States, right?
That's the 300 number is the United States. He spent his whole time in solitary confinement.
Right. And so, complete waste of his life. And yes, he did make a confession, and I understand that. And I get where, we all have to take responsibility for our own actions, and it would be smart to not talk to the police, especially not for 9 hours under circumstances like that. And it makes you look guilty, but get yourself an attorney because, see, that's the kind of thing.
That guy didn't feel free to go.
He wasn't free to go.
Yeah, that guy didn't.
He got bullied into making that confession, and I think that those men who were involved in doing that, they should be ashamed of themselves. It's a disgrace to the human race.
They absolutely should be. And
to put somebody in that position like that.
My thinking, his case is why I think that like law enforcement should not be allowed to hold things back. That period. Because there were several things held back there. Even the prosecution was holding things back.
How do you feel like you're doing your job if you've got to wiggle it to make it work?
Oh, they just don't know any better. Have you not? I mean, I'm changing the subject, but I'm not.
How
changing the subject.
How can they not know better?
Well, did you watch? This is on Peacock. They have a thing on Peacock right now. I'm not advertising for them. This is not a sponsorship of them. I thought it was well made, though. They have a show on Peacock right now called Monster in the Shadows. And this is about the Brittany Wood case out of Alabama. Have you seen this?
I'm actually watching it right now. I'm only about, I don't know how many episodes there are, but I think I'm on like episode 3.
Well, then we won't talk about that one right now. But I will say, watch the 2 cops in that case in the videos. Specifically watch, there's this guy that is a former police officer who pops up. His ability to read defendants is among the worst I've ever seen. And like, so there's cops that just can't read a defendant and read what's going on. And then there's cops that make up what they think they know and act like an expert in it.
Okay, well, but let's put this into some perspective for a moment. Okay, because I feel like this may get lost in translation like everything else in life. Let's say I work at just any fast food restaurant nearby. My job is to go in, I open up, I get food started, I take orders, I serve people. I have a list of things that I accomplish, and as tasks arise during the day, I take care of them. Okay, that's my job. I leave at the end of the day and I come home and then I go back tomorrow and I do the same thing. All right. It's like these investigators, these law enforcement officials, they look at their job that exact same way. Like they go to work, they've had this crime that's been committed. I've got to solve this crime. And then like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to solve the crime, even if it means bullying this guy into confessing to killing his cousin when clearly he didn't. Right?
I agree with you, but the difference is that if you go to your fast food restaurant job, nobody is going to spend the rest of their life in prison because of how you did the fries that day.
Well, that is what I'm saying here. I'm saying it can't be this cookie cutter thing like it is. It's got so much more at stake than just undercooked fries or burnt fries or whatever. But it's treated the same way. And that's what I'm saying. Like, it's impossible to avoid it because that's human nature, right? Human nature is like, we have to work. Well, at least here in the United States, in my opinion, we have to work like 10 times harder than it's even possible for us to really work, right? To really get a job done. Like these it's impossible for these investigators to get what they need to do done. And I have a certain appreciation for that. However, at the end of the day, because of how society is and how, you know, this goes so deep, like if a detective isn't solving crimes, as far as everybody's concerned, he's not doing his job. And so it's not he has more pressure on him to get something done and off of his desk than he does to get it done accurately and to put the right person in jail. Do you see what I'm saying? Because it shouldn't be that way.
Oh, I agree with you. I mean, the reason I pointed it out in the Brittany Wood case is because there's a couple of really good moments that you're going to come to where he is describing how he knows when someone is giving off deceptive signs, and everything he says there, basically cops that were taught that way need to just be let go. Because he's talking about the guy nodding his head but saying no, and the guy's just nodding his head because he nods his head. He's a head nodder. There are head nodders in the world.
I feel like so I pick up on things from people, and I can actually be pretty like bullheaded about some things that I have opinions on. But it would take a lot for me to go off of those instincts, the way that I've seen what you're talking about here, because his instincts are wrong. And
Exactly.
I keep it in my head
He
always.
keeps putting the cheeseburgers in the fry basket. They're that wrong.
It is. Like, he's completely wrong. And I am not exactly sure that he would even be aware of it.
He would not.
And so because of that, it like makes you go, well, it doesn't look like there, except for the fact that like it's like negligent malice to put somebody in a position where you're going to arrest them for something they didn't do, and you're going to add to that. Like, that would be like sort of a bad, it's not a good way to be, but I don't feel like he like sets out to do it. Like, if he was handed the person who actually did it, he would have done the same thing to them. It's just, it would have been better because it would have been the actual person. And so it's not like he's like, you know, malevolent and like they're being vindictive and like trying to put innocent people away. It's just like they don't care. It's like too neutral, because law enforcement, believe it or not, they work for us.
Right.
They are supposed to protect and serve us. Now, that gets misconstrued a lot. And you and I have both had experiences in our lives
Yep.
that are unbelievable in
absolutely.
the pursuit of like what it actually means. And as a law-abiding citizen, and I'm not saying it to put them down, because I have absolute respect for law enforcement officers who enforce the law. I don't have any respect for those who are bullies, but it's hard. So a law enforcement officer, on their face, in the very, you know, essential structure of their job is they should want just as much to put a criminal behind bars as they should to not put somebody who hasn't committed a crime behind bars. And that gets lost.
Well, people get lazy, and that's the biggest thing. So I don't want to spoil this if you haven't seen it all, because it gets so bonkers.
Yeah, don't spoil it for me, because I'm going to watch that.
So I'll just say this. After it was all over, I went and looked him up. I was curious. That one cop that you've already seen, I was like, how did he become a cop? And I couldn't figure out how he became a cop. And then I found where his dad was the chief deputy in that area.
Well, that's in like Alabama.
Yeah. And I was like, I was looking that where, you know, he had retired or something had happened to him or whatever. And I was like, that's it. I don't need to know anymore. This is just,
oh yeah. Well,
this is just blue line nepotism. And that's how this guy's there, thinking he knows what he's talking about, because it's like he went to the classes and he heard all of the things his instructors were saying. And he decided, my instructors, all those people are wrong. I'm just going to do it this way.
So there's this, and this may happen here. I don't know. I haven't gotten through it, but there's a situation where people paint themselves as a gray rock, so to speak. Have you heard of this?
I know what gray rocking is. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was actually looking for images to model my resurfacing after, and I got way off on a tangent with gray rock syndrome. But anyway, so I feel like, and I would have liked to have seen, rather than have it like cut together afterwards, I would have liked to have played this man as a producer, not even on camera. I would have played the investigator, the clips that I had. And I would have said, okay, well, that's clearly not happening here. Because
so you mean do his interview and then
confront him.
And then confront him by having him watch what he's lying about.
Okay, and so I couldn't figure, I don't know that he's lying as much as he like has no idea what he's talking about.
Well, so the gray rock thing, you're saying that he's trying to make it so it's like he's not really attached to it? Is that what you mean? Like he's uninterested?
No, that's not what I was going to say. What I was saying is the only thing that I can figure out is the only way that guy, that the investigator could respond to, like a producer of the show confronting him with the direct contradiction of what he's saying would be to do the gray rock, right?
Oh.
And so I was like, well, is that why they didn't do it? Because there are situations in life, believe it or not, and I've learned this the hard way, essentially. I would not be one to be a gray rock, but people turn into gray rocks dealing with me. If that tells you anything. Now, I do feel like some things are worth pushing and some things you just need to drop. But
yeah, you pick your battles.
Sure, everybody should. And I get it that I can be harsh, and that's fine. I'm not harsh about anything that doesn't matter to me, though. So what is the response ever going to be, like, from this guy? Like, let's say we've got this investigator here, and, we say, okay, this is what you've said here, and this is what is happening here. Now, explain why it's different, right?
Right.
There is absolutely no answer to that.
Huh.
Is there?
I don't think so.
Okay, because, it's the proof is in the pudding in this situation, because I believe I don't think he's ever gone back and watched this interview, for one thing. So he's going off of memory. Okay.
Right.
And it's almost like he's sitting there talking with her, the suspect, who is also a victim of a missing person at this point.
Right.
It's almost like he wrote a narrative in his head.
Well,
and
he did. He's literally. So you say he's not really lying. I
don't know if he's lying.
I have to point out he's speaking in the affirmative. When they ask him questions, he's describing how she talked to him. And it's a lie because we watched the video kind of side by side with it. And she's not doing what he says. Therefore, he's either misremembering.
Which is what I'm getting at.
Okay.
I'm saying I don't know if he's lying. He very well could be lying. Okay. He very well could be. But why? What's the point of that?
To you. If I ask you to tell me a story that you told me, and in this instance, the story was 7 years earlier. So he's remembering things from 2012, 2014, 2015. He's talking about them in probably 2018, 2019. If I ask you to tell me a story and you don't remember that story, the only way you're not lying is if you either ask me questions about it or you say, I don't remember that story.
I don't agree with that necessarily, but I understand your point, and you're right, okay, because he is lying by omission, essentially. Even if it's not a direct lie, he is telling a mistruth. Okay. My problem is the conversation that's happening there is basically the whole gist of her story is like it didn't happen at all.
He says she was making tacit admissions to it some of it happening.
But that's not occurring.
That's a lie. That is not a misremembering.
Okay, but here's the problem with that. This is where the gray rock comes in. If the tacit admissions are not happening, which they're not, we see it in the video, it's not happening. Like, that's his justification for charging and arresting her.
Oh, it totally is. It's
what
the way
happens there? Like, he has to turn in. He has to turn into a gray rock because you can't even pretend that what he's saying is actually happening because it's not. It's not cut. It's raw footage. It's got somebody blurred out in it. It is straight up. I bet he doesn't even, I don't even know if the guy knows it exists. So he is recalling an interview and he's saying, she said this, and they're playing where she's saying literally the opposite. Okay?
Well, I even said to you, they could have cherry picked the edit, and here's how that goes down for me. He could be remembering talking to the evil twins that are involved here, and he's just mistaking who is who.
Okay, but why would he have arrested her, though?
Or he could be recalling, and I'm being serious when I say this, he could be recalling his own version of events from a interview conversation. Because the way that guy was doing,
Wow.
that means it's not on the recording. The way that guy was like interpreting people's body language and stuff, he like all these people get. So I don't want to ruin any more of this, but I'll say this: a lot of people get arrested and charged with crimes against children in this case. And if you watch it very carefully, you will see that when you're finished watching this and you go research all of this and you dig into everything that happened here, you will still have absolutely zero idea of what really happened. But you will know this, that some of the people sitting at the defense table were liars, and a lot of the people that were witnesses for the prosecution were liars. You will know that, like, in all of these lies, what they should have done is thrown most of this nonsense out. And they didn't.
I would really like to have a conversation with that investigator.
I couldn't. I could not talk to that guy for 2 seconds. He would hate me.
I would be nice about it because honestly, I feel like
That guy cannot, like, I understand the gray rock thing, but I'm not the kind of person you can gray rock because I'll gray rock you back.
okay, but this though is cut and dry because to me, well, now he's answering the questions on video, right? And so you've got her interview on video and then he would have absolutely had the opportunity to explain everything you're saying, which would be, well, this isn't what I was referencing when I was recalling, right? Okay, so he could say that, and then you could probe it further. You could say, oh, well, this seems to be the important part since it's what's available and what was recorded. Right. And so then he's going to have some sort of lame explanation for that. Right. Okay. But at the end of the day, the point is he is never going to be able to justify what he did based on what his own words are saying and what the evidence shows.
People like that, like, the only way I would want to ask him any questions, like, I understand what you're saying because you have the ability to confront in that situation. But the only way that, like, people like that particular investigator, I feel like, would be completely truthful, because here's the deal with them. They're confident on the surface, but they're scared underneath.
Well, no kidding, because they double down.
Yeah, he doubled down on a couple of things where the only thing I felt like was appropriate with him, for me to have a conversation with him, I would have to hook him up to a car battery polygraph where I have the option. Yeah, where I have the option, like, if I feel like he's lying, that I can juice him. And if I could, then I'd have a conversation with him. Anything else, that's the kind of cop that lies on the stand. That's the kind of cop that lies to a judge for a warrant. That's the kind of cop that lies to everybody he encounters. And he has the kind of cop working up his chain of command. He's no longer a cop, by the way. But he has the kind of cop working up his chain of command that is going to cover for him. Those are the worst.
Okay, but you have to... Okay, so you're right about that, but I don't see it necessarily that way. I see it as, like, they actually think they're getting their job done. Like, their job is not what it
right. You're 100% correct. But
okay.
The problem is they're too stupid to do the job.
Well, I feel like, and I'm thinking it probably didn't happen. I don't know yet because I haven't finished it. I feel like this was a huge missed opportunity because at the end of the day, though, I am the kind of person, while I respect a lot of boundaries, in this particular situation, what I've seen so far, my confrontation would end with him admitting that he should not have done what he did.
I think I would just make him angry.
I feel like from my own experience in life, sometimes you need something sort of abrupt to make you realize something. Like, for example, being called out specifically, like, okay, you're saying she said that, but she's clearly not saying that. And so perhaps you're skewed. Perhaps you should think about, like, every case you've ever had and, like, make sure you haven't done this to, like, every person you've ever arrested. That kind of thing. Because I feel like that would be a worthwhile confrontation in a nice way. I'm not saying that you are, I'm not saying anything about anything except, like...
Are you thinking, like, explain it to me type? Is that your tactic here? Explain to me the differences here.
Well, okay. So here's what I the point of it would be if he knew he was wrong, why did he come on the show and why was he lying? Like, why do that? I feel like he might genuinely realize that, like, oh my gosh, like everything I was thinking, like none of that happened. And he might actually be like, wow, like how many times have I done that?
Well, none of the other cops involved in this show came on the show.
Exactly. And I'm just saying what happened there, and there may be more, and please let there be more. I really hope that there's something else.
What,
I don't
think
it
has been cherry picked and this is just them skewing it a little,
or something else. Like they did it for a reason,
high
though.
Drama.
They did it for a reason, though, and I don't even know that you caught it until I brought it to your attention. I don't know. It just really irked me.
The way you said it at first, I was a little confused. But with the clip you sent me, I heard what was being said and saw him talking.
But it didn't register?
No, it registered. I was just like, where's the revelation in that? And I don't want to tell you any more right this second.
Well, and ultimately, the reason it stuck with me is because I don't feel like there is a revelation.
Well, then I will tell you that your gut is correct. It's really annoying.
I know. No, I knew it immediately. And I think that was the point the producers were making. And I wish that they would have gone a step further and not made it innuendo. Like, I wish they had said it outright and they had confronted it outright, because I feel like being diplomatic and politically correct squashes a lot of opportunities we have to bring like very disruptive attitudes like under control. Like, for example, his attitude that like everything he did was justified and like everything that happened this way. They've got evidence there that what he did was not justified. And there was actually contradictory evidence to what he was saying. And like, that's the perfect opportunity to take it to the next level. Even though it's not diplomatic, he's not going to like you. But as long as you smile and you're nice, I mean, what can he possibly say? Except I was wrong.
I think you save it for the, do you have any more questions moment. I think that's the thing you do. They may not have found this until they had it after. You know what I mean? They may have gotten his interview.
I just can't figure out why they did this.
I'm not sure either. I'm glad that you're watching it. I think more people should watch that story. I do have a couple more topics I want to cover, if it's okay with you. One of them is I'm so annoyed about right now. I think I told you about this girl. Now, so this is a missing persons case. It's just unfolding. Usually, the next couple of things are just unfolding, and I hate doing stuff like that because so much changes in them. This is Gabby Petito. Have you heard about this?
I have, yeah.
Okay, so I only have this case. Like, I saw podcasters were like putting out episodes about this, and at first I was like, "Why are they doing this?" But I ended up with a question in here. Here's the like super small summary: is a woman from Long Island, 22 years old, named Gabrielle or Gabby Petito, has been traveling with her boyfriend Brian Laundrie in a 2012 Ford Transit van that has Florida plates. He has now returned to his Florida home in that van, and he has hired a lawyer. They have been producing a little web series together called Nomadic Static during this trip they were taking. They've been out wandering around. Supposedly, the last place she's heard from and seen is Grand Teton, which is out. This is in a national park in Wyoming. She's described as 5'5", 110 pounds, with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a triangle tattoo that says "Let It Be." They were traveling in a white 2012 Ford Transit van with the license plate QFTG03. She stopped communicating with friends and family. Mom says that the daughter FaceTimed her around August 23rd or August the 24th. They're not exactly sure of the last FaceTime, but she had received text from her daughter's phones up until August 30th, but she was not sure who had sent them. Her mom or dad, they're all talking about this. Joe Petito, who is Gabby's father, he moved down from Long Island to Vero Beach to be closer to his daughter, who moved to Northport in Western Florida with her boyfriend about 2 years ago. She had gone up to New York to attend her brother's high school graduation on June 17th, and then they left on their cross-country adventure. They had gone down to Salt Lake City, Utah. Bottom line is, she seems to be missing. Her boyfriend's lawyered up. There's a lot of people talking about this on social media. There's some irresponsible podcasters and YouTubers that are talking about this. So I figured, why not be irresponsible about this case as well, but from a different perspective. First thing, go ahead. Do you got?
I just wanted to clarify. She was officially reported missing September 11th, correct?
Yeah. She was reported missing much, much later than what's going on.
That was actually Saturday.
Yeah. So this guy showed up with her van, and to the Suffolk County Police, she was reported missing at 6:05 p.m. on September the 11th. That is absolutely correct. There's some crazy stuff surrounding this. The first one is, I just found this morning as we've been talking, and I don't think I've shared it with you. They have confirmed that in Moab, Utah, they definitely had contact with the police in August.
Right, and the police were actually called on them.
Yeah, the police were called on them.
By a third party.
Yeah, there's an incident between Brian and Gabby by a third party. There's an incident report. They're being kind of cagey about it, but this is something on August the 12th, 2021. Neither Brian nor Gabby were the reporting party. There was an investigation, and it was seen that there was insufficient evidence related to what was going on to justify criminal charges. So
they were having a fight.
Yeah, they were having a fight, and so they would have been in Utah then. Well, this is where this gets my attention, and I don't know if you remember this. You probably will. Shortly after that incident, there was footage recorded in Los Angeles County of a woman screaming for help from a transit van. A kid filmed this woman from an upstairs balcony. It turned out he was a juvenile. Police were able to make contact eventually with, they haven't released if this is related. At first, they just put out an attempt to identify with a video and a photo of the van. It doesn't look like the exact same van, but at first glance, I was like, I wonder if that is somehow related to Gabby's case. Like somehow they went Utah up to Los Angeles. It doesn't look like it works, like timing wise. It looks like it's too far.
But that van is a weird looking van, and to see it twice like that, it's weird.
Yeah, and so I looked at it.
But I don't think they're related.
Yeah, it's like 700 miles they would have had to have traveled.
They found that girl. I think that girl just didn't want to go with her parents or something. Like it was a
family matter. Yeah, it could have been. I didn't hear the actual outcome of that, but I wanted to mention that case. And if anybody knows anything about Gabby's case, this is as far as it goes for me because I don't think people should be covering this. But if you've seen Gabby Petito or you know anything about her case, please contact your local authorities or just Google her name and pull the phone numbers from the top, specifically from Suffolk County. If you can get in touch with them right now, they have the investigation.
I have a question for you. You said that he brought her van back. So is it confirmed that it was her van?
It's something I read this morning said the family of a missing Northport woman appealed to the public for help in finding their daughter who went missing on a cross-country trip with her fiance who returned home without her. Multiple agencies, including Northport Police, Suffolk County Police Department in New York, and the FBI are investigating this case spanning multiple states. Gabby Petito's family says she embarked on the trip with her fiance in July. As a mom, I had concerns of my daughter going on a road trip, but in general, I felt safe that they were together and they had a plan and an itinerary, said Gabby's mom, Nicole Schmidt. The couple updated their trip across the United States on social media, and Gabby sent updates to her family several times a week. But by late August, those updates became less frequent. The last text from her daughter, Schmidt says, came on August 30th. I wasn't getting responses. I believe she was on a place with no service. It was like day 8 or 9. I became concerned, and I figured she shouldn't be off the grid that long, Schmidt recalled. It doesn't say who the Vans is here, but it does say the van has now been removed from his house in this article. It says police said Petito was last known to be in Wyoming's Grand Teton National Park, had been traveling in a white 2012 Ford Transit van, Florida license plate, which police said has since been recovered. According to most reports, her fiance drove the van back to Florida. Late at night, there was a bright light. They were towing the van off about 11 o'clock last night, said Keith Graves, the couple's neighbor in Northport. He is a person of interest, but he's not known to be a suspect or associated with her disappearance. He's hired an attorney, and according to Petito's family, he's refusing to cooperate with investigators. And this says that the Crime Stoppers line at 1-800-220-TIPS is the place to call, or you can go to 1-800-CALL-FBI, and you can just reference the Tampa, Florida FBI.
Well, I think that this is probably not going to end well.
No, it's probably not. It's one of those cases that people are just sort of, starting to talk about. And I try and withhold judgment on all of this stuff. But the reason it's worth mentioning is because Gabby hasn't been found. So
right. And so in this particular situation, I understand he's got an attorney and he should take his attorney's legal advice, but he should probably give them the authorities her last known location, like specifically the last time he saw her. Because
but, if they're not going to find her, they're not going to find her. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just thinking from both sides. I want her found personally, but if he did something to her,
well, no kidding. To me, it seems like this could be like sorted out because for one thing, he didn't abscond. It sounds like he almost drove directly back to where they would find him. But he also, it doesn't appear to have called. He didn't report her missing.
So you're saying if he's innocent, he just goes, I left her on a highway in this place. Go find her. Is that what you mean?
Well, yeah.
No, I agree.
What are the alternatives here? Like, if he wasn't involved, like, he would have called the police. You don't just show back up with the van, like, oh, well, she got out somewhere and I just didn't find her. Nobody's going to believe that.
No, I agree.
So, you said you didn't want to speculate. I don't see a whole lot of speculation happening here. He showed back up without her.
Right. No.
So he needs to say, like, her tent is located here and she decided to stay there, right?
Right.
Or something to that effect. Because otherwise, and I imagine because he did go, like, it sounds like right back, within a little bit, because it takes a while to drive across country because he was in the Midwest. And so he would have been headed back to Florida. So that would take a while. It seems to me like, it's probably not premeditated. It was probably a cramped space where I feel like it's something where like, he snapped and it was not planned. They weren't getting along.
But we don't know that she's left at this point. She's not in the van. We know that for sure.
Okay. But there was nowhere for her to be left. They were in a park, like sleeping in the van. Like it's a traveling van, right?
We don't know that anything has happened to her, though, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, maybe you don't know that.
He might be an asshole.
Are you just being...
I'm going to take a walk. And he did.
Okay, but she would have told her father.
Oh, you're saying because he's not in contact with anyone? Well,
yeah. When you say, like, you don't know that anything's happened to her, are you just being diplomatic?
I am acting in the legal bounds that I feel like I have the authority to on information that's 24 hours old. That's basically what I'm doing. I don't want to get in a situation where I'm accusing someone of something where I don't. Like, this is a case where I say, like, get the story out because I think that, like, she definitely needs to be found. Whatever house she's found, she needs to be found.
And, right. You're absolutely right.
And if he is charged or named as a suspect or they start to piece together anything, I would talk about it again.
Right. But we would be having a missing girl that was like wherever it was that they were last at, as opposed to the fact that
they're saying Grand Teton.
they're towing the vehicle from his house in Florida that he drove back home, and she wasn't with him.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
In that particular situation, and let's just say it's anybody. It doesn't have to be this couple. I mean, it could be switched around. The guy could be in the girl's role and the girl could be in the guy's role. If you have had a fight with your loved one and you've left them across the country, or they made other plans and you should be concerned, for one thing, because I assume if they're in a adult relationship that, stuff will calm down and, they won't be mad at each other anymore. But that doesn't seem to be what's happened here. And when all you're hearing is he's lawyered up, well, all you got to do is tell him where she's at. And by that, I don't necessarily mean her body. I mean, where was she when you diverted and you ended up here?
I would agree with that for sure.
Okay, and so because that's not happening and there is this whole missing person...
You're saying that just makes the suspicions grow the other direction.
Well, I would like to know, just for my own benefit, what you think the alternative here is.
I don't know. Her social media went away and then it all came back online. So it came back online it was blank for a day or two, like it had been deleted, and then suddenly it wasn't. Mm-hmm. So to me, I'm not so sure that this girl isn't just if these guys are okay. Clearly, say they're doing their shtick, nomadic static, or whatever it is, and they need to increase their ratings and get some national attention.
Do you think it could be a hoax?
I've seen it before. You have too. You and I have followed cases pretty closely that turned out to be complete crap. Now, sometimes we know immediately. In fact, 99%. I was going to say,
I haven't really followed closely. I tend to drop off once I realize it's crap. But sometimes it takes a while. I guess you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. We followed people who weren't really missing and things like that. And so that's it. That's all I'm going to say about Gabby right now.
I was just curious so you think the alternative is it's just, it could possibly be a publicity stunt, which would actually be probably the better outcome here.
I'm going to hold on to that hope because this is a 22-year-old girl. So in my mind, I say it that way, not because I want to be disrespectful. She's a victim of a crime. I say it that way because the truth is social media stops looking when the body is found. They don't try and solve it. They don't talk about it anymore. And they also stop looking when they assume there's a murder that's happened and body found or not found. Except for the case of Maura Murray. A lot of times the public, social media, all the things that are needed to find missing people die off if the assumption is made early that it's a murder.
Don't you think, though, that that's part of the reason Maura Murray has continued on? Because they've never found her body and they have no idea what happened to her.
I think her case is an exception. It was the beginning of the internet boom for this type of stuff. In fact, there is a Maura Murray update. Did you see that thing I sent you?
I did. I didn't personally feel like it was enough to connect it, but
no, I haven't connected it. There's been a Loon Mountain theory for years that people have talked about somebody. I have a question for you about Maura Murray. So this update is not a real update yet, but basically somebody found something that may be a bone fragment, maybe human remains on Loon Mountain, where there's a ski resort, which is probably about 45 minutes drive through the mountains from where Maura Murray was last seen. I have a new idea related to her case. I've always just thought she either, I like to think that she escaped to Canada and started a new life. Those are very, 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 very rare cases and unlikely in Maura's case. I like to think about it when that case comes up. But I did start to consider something else because I think you and I have always sort of gone, she's succumbed to the elements within this radius and this time. Probably.
Yeah, like we had a whole. I actually have an idea of where she probably is.
Yeah, we've been over this a lot. I was wondering, like, because of the conditions that night and the area that she was in, is it possible that she was a panic situation after somebody hit her with a car?
You mean like aside from the car accident she had?
Yeah, like so she has her accident and she's walking along and somebody's, had a drink at dinner or something and they clip her and throw her in the back of their car and dump the body somewhere.
So I would say that is just as possible as anything else. I have rarely indulged in the Marbury saga because I feel like there were a number of things happening there, and it has always been my thought, just based on the circumstances and not just what was happening that night, but the overall surrounding circumstances. Having been a 22, was she 22? I know she was old enough to buy alcohol because she bought alcohol from the ABC store. So she was at least 21. I believe she was
21 years old.
Okay, so 21, having been a 21-year-old girl a long time ago. So I put myself in that position and I think to myself, okay, I wrecked my father's brand new car. I'm so stressed out because of XYZ. I'm driving along and I've been drinking terrible wine out of a box. And I lose control on a curb and I have now wrecked my car and I can't tell like how bad the damage is. And it's snowing and, there was so much traffic for it to have happened where it happened, like the way the story plays out. But I've always thought that, so I feel like her dad was irritated, was understandably irritated at her for wrecking his brand new car. Okay. There's never any mention of whether or not she was drinking when she wrecked his car. She had gone out and they were about to buy her a new car, but so she took her dad's new car out after she dropped him off at the hotel. And then on the way back, she did like $10,000 worth of damage to this brand new car. And now she's wrecked her car and she has no idea how wrecked it is. I imagine she probably tried to move it and it wouldn't move. And so she had determined she had wrecked it, really bad. And she's been drinking. Okay. It would be a little more supported if she had been drinking during the first accident as well, but that's never said anywhere. And so I've always thought she panicked and ran off into the woods. And so the only reason I bring that all up now is because that would contradict her being on the road.
Right. You're right.
And I've always felt like, because why would you leave your car when you've had an accident? Like if she hadn't been drinking, if it truly was
destination, is that
when
what you
she's
mean?
leaving.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Like where's she going? Because okay, let's put a different spin on this. She hasn't wrecked her father's car. She probably wouldn't have even been driving through New Hampshire if that hadn't have happened. And you're not drinking, and you accidentally slide, and you have an accident like she had. If she hadn't been drinking, she would not have left her vehicle there.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that.
And so because of that, she was trying, I don't know what she was thinking, because like that's not really how that works as far as just leaving your vehicle behind. Like I didn't do it, but
it's not mine.
But I imagine it has something to do with the spilt wine and the whole situation. And she was just about to be, and like, she's not wrong as far as that goes, because DUIs can literally ruin your life. Okay.
Oh, it's going to wreck a lot of things for her, including like because she was in a nursing program. That's one of the big problems that she would have is the licensing.
And I felt like she, so I felt like that this is what, I wouldn't have done this, but like 21-year-old me, okay, I'm thinking to myself, if I was her doing what she was doing, I would think, I'll just go out long enough so I'll get the alcohol out of my system, right?
Yeah.
I'm just going to hide for long enough so, like, when I do come back,
I'm sober.
I'm not going to get in trouble with the DUI situation. And that's what I think. But I think the alcohol would have clouded her vision, not vision, but her thinking. It would have seemed like a good idea, right? To go out in the snow and wait it out. But because of that, I think because if she wasn't going to hide in a sense, why run away from the car to begin with?
Yeah, I'd never figured
If she's just going to be running down the road anyway, she might as well have sat in her car, you know? But I've always felt like she ducked to go hide. And I feel like it was specifically because she
thought she'd burn the alcohol off and then be able to go back and do something.
I think that her father had let her have it, which it happens. Things like that happen. You know, she wrecked his new car. My dad would have torn me a new one if that had happened. And, you know, especially because she was being irresponsible. And, you know, I think that has really weighed on him over the years, and he really shouldn't feel bad about it. I mean, things like that happen. And it just so happens that sometimes when we're parents, we forget like where our children are in life. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I know exactly.
And so while like 40-year-old me would be like, it's not a good idea to go run off into the snow because I'm going to freeze to death and die. I'm going to have to take my licks here, right? 21-year-old you don't realize how much life is going to suck anyway yet. So you're like, wait, I screwed everything up. Let me push pause, right?
Yeah, 21-year-old me was an idiot.
And so because of that, okay, so what you just said, like when I was 21, I thought 21 was like this mature adult person, right? But now that I'm older, I feel like 21-year-olds are still children.
Oh, yes.
And like with the consequences looming over her with all the stuff that was going on, there was absolutely no reason that she would have left the vehicle for anything but to hide until her blood alcohol leveled off. The problem was it was so cold that she froze to death.
Yeah, ultimately, that's sort of where I land. I've had a couple of odd theories over the years I've spouted out, but ultimately...
There's been a lot. I mean, she is the most speculated case out there, I believe.
Probably. I mean, she's got to be close.
Because it's the oldest. Yeah.
It's certainly like one of the first like cases that the internet itself was able to grab a hold of.
Yeah, so. She's younger than I am. And because, I always followed cases of girls older than me because I guess I felt like on the path, I wanted to like not go down their path. But like, girls that were younger than me, and it didn't necessarily apply. So while I appreciate her story in that, you know, she is a missing person who, she should have been found, but I feel like she will be found eventually. I was really hopeful when I was looking, when you sent me that link, but I don't think it's going to apply to her. I mean, it might, but.
Well, Dennis Towle is from that town. He was one of the potential Israel Keys victims we talked about. He was from that area. There's two missing persons in that area. It's called Grafton County where it was found. So it could turn out to be someone else.
It didn't look very promising though, because like you said,
it was just like bone fragments, and it didn't make a lot of sense for anything recent to me.
Well, I mean, maybe it is her. And, you know, then obviously that would require a story to go along with it because.
Oh, no. I mean, I think they dug into a grave from 50 years ago or something, didn't realize it.
Oh, well, that's entirely possible. Yeah, you never know. But I assume that.
If it is her, I will be interested to see how the true crime community treats that, how it goes.
Oh, it will. I feel like I actually have a bleak. I don't know if it's something everybody does or if I'm the only one. I always thought it was just normal, but as I've gotten older, I've learned maybe it's not normal. I put myself in the person's position. And so I can actually imagine Maura Murray, like,
I do the same thing.
immediately before this happened. I actually know exactly how she feels because, like, while I haven't experienced the exact same thing she did, everybody has moments in life where everything's out of control and the bottom seems to be falling out, right?
Yeah.
And I know that that's what she was experiencing. Like, there's no question.
Yeah, I don't know if it's normal or not, but I do the same thing, and I've been able to do it with her case.
And so because of that, nothing else to me has ever made sense. If she was going to run down the road, she would have just sat in her car and waited. There was no reason for her to hide except, and it's not even a real reason because like the consequences are going to be there no matter what. But like, I really think that her thought was, she wanted to like salvage, perhaps, the car accident by not getting a DUI as well.
Yeah, I think the poor decision making played into it exactly like you just described. And that probably was the rationale at the time.
Because what else could she possibly be thinking? Like, let me run down the road? Like,
I don't know.
Let me run to the cops as they're on their way here? Like, none of that would make sense. I've run
a couple different scenarios, but I've never figured out the destination. And I have a little trouble imagining how the snow played into it all. That's the other thing. Because, I don't, me personally, I don't even like to walk. Like, if it's, say, I was driving along one time. I was in the upstate New York area, and there was something similar that happened in, Massachusetts. Driving along and it's snowing and something happening to your vehicle, whether it's serious or not so serious, but having to pull over. And the accident's a little different. I've never had an accident like that in the snow, but having to pull over and get out of a vehicle in the snow, I don't like to go very deep into any kind of woods or anything when there's snow out. Main reason being, one of the things that snow does for me personally is it makes everything really hard to judge the terrain underneath the snow. So I feel like I personally could end up in water or a hole more easily. So I don't like to go very far into the snow. That's why I was asking you about the road part, if she got hit by a car. But that would be a lot of coincidences happening at one time. Well,
and so because of what you just said, all that stuff, you're right. I mean, all that comes into play. And you've got to think, well, at least I've got to think, okay, so with all that in mind, what am I going to think in that moment is more important than the fact that I could fall through and, end up in a pond and die or whatever. And I think it was an irrational fear of the consequences she was about to face, piling on to the consequences she was already going to have to face. And I think that was enough to drive. I mean, because what are the odds that it was anything else?
Oh, they get so minuscule. Okay, so let's run down the list of things we've gone over in the past really quickly on her.
Well, they've
abducted by Israel Keys,
which did not happen.
An abduction by locals or people that normally weren't serial killers per se, but did something bad to her.
Okay, so
meeting up with a tandem. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so okay. An abduction by locals. So that would involve what? Somebody else also being out driving along?
And living nearby and never having been suspected.
But if they live nearby, did she go up to their door? And if so, why? Because she was going to ask for help, but she didn't sit and wait for help from the first responders? Why would she be doing that?
I don't know. I mean, there's a bunch of possibilities that ultimately end with the one that makes the most sense is her succumbing to the elements.
And see, to me, those possibilities have just sort of whittled themselves off because it just doesn't make sense. If you're going to ask for help from some random person, you might as well wait for the fire department, in my opinion. And I feel I don't think that she said, I'm going to go kill myself, right? Okay. I don't think
Yeah.
she ran out thinking, let me go die now. I think that it was just so much that she didn't care. Like she was just trying to undo some stupid decisions. And I know that people can make stupid decisions, especially like in the state of mind she was in, especially having been drinking, especially, and the adrenaline from a car accident is going to, even though like, I don't think she was hurt. I always was under the impression her car like spun around, right?
She went to the opposite side of the road. Is that what you mean?
Well, what I'm saying is it was jarring. Like it was enough to be like, oh my God, I just had a car accident.
She had a car accident that would have been like, what just happened to me? Yes.
Okay. And so your adrenaline starts pumping. And I remember at 21, it would slow down a lot sooner than it does now. But, so she's got that. So the adrenaline is going to directly like conflict with the relaxing effect of the alcohol, right? And that's just leading to like all kinds of bad decision making. And you've got the fact that she said, don't call the police. And that, I think that's sort of what has driven me towards that, because the bus driver saying, which he did call the police, but she said, don't call the police. I called AAA, but he knew that she didn't have phone service there. And there was all these like contributing factors. But the fact that, somebody said she did say, don't call the police, it gives you a little heads up. Why wouldn't you want the police called?
Yeah.
If you've genuinely done nothing wrong.
Well, she had lied to her family and everything ahead of time as well, where she basically had not her family, but the school, like lying to say there'd been a death in the family.
Right. And I understand she didn't know how to deal with whatever was happening to her.
Of course not. She had brought a lot on herself in a short period of time. What I feel, this sounds crazy. Have you ever like started doing something, you get pretty deep into it, you've spent some money, and you're going down this like path that like you get to, in your mind, you sort of have a financial / time suck point of no return? The West Point thing, and then suddenly studying nursing, I was wondering if she didn't like look at everything and go, I don't want to do this. Like, I'm not good at this. Like, this is not going to be fun for me. And then
it's possible.
That was what was causing the additional like drinking and other activities that were going on.
You don't even need a catalyst like that at that age, though, because you've got literally some people have literally the entire weight of the world on their shoulders.
Yeah,
and
for good reason.
It's personality, really.
Like
well, because you're making these epic decisions that are really going to change your life. Now, I watched something, I guess it was pretty recently. I don't even know what it was, though, but it was something about her and her case. And they were very kind and said that, she had transferred from West Point to UMass to study nursing. She got kicked out of West Point. And I think that gets skipped over. But the reason I'm saying that is not to be like derogatory towards her, but to say like, okay, that's stressful, right?
Right.
We have I've never heard whether, there was some sort of looming conflict where she was, like at UMass. Like, I don't know if like, was she in danger of getting dropped from the program? Had she missed too many classes? Was something happening there? When I was in college, if you missed, I think it was 3 classes, you were automatically dropped from the class. And so
she had committed a series of thefts in 2003. Do you know this?
Yeah, the credit cards.
Yeah, she was
buying food, which is so weird. I think we talked about that. Like, it was just a weird. Like, she had like stolen credit cards or something like that.
Yeah, she had used someone's credit card number. I don't know how that went down. I remembered it at one point. I looked at all this stuff, but basically, she had ended up on deferred like adjudication. So if she for 6 months, they kick the charges type thing.
That was another thing, that played into that, because obviously on a deferred adjudication, a DUI is not going to help you.
Well, I thought the charges had already been dismissed, but
See, I don't know exactly. That could be why I don't know, is because if it was not relevant, I probably just, forgot about it. But it seemed to me, though, like she was just a normal 21-year-old kid. I mean, she did do some like mischievous type. I mean, I don't even feel like, you shouldn't use other people's credit cards, but it's also not something that's going to be like a huge criminal offense, right? Just, it's like stealing money from somebody, right?
It's probably a petty larceny at that point, but a multiple would become a felony.
But she was dealing with stuff because 21 is a little bit old to be stealing like makeup. I think is what she got kicked out of West Point.
She wasn't 21 when that happened. She was 19 turning 20 when that happened.
Okay, but like that's like 13-year-old behavior, 12, 13-year-old behavior. And so I'm just saying she's dealing with, I don't know what's going on there. But it's immaturity as opposed to like criminality.
Agreed.
And like using somebody's credit card. And like, how do the police even get involved in a situation like that?
Well, the person disputes the charges, and back then they would end up, somebody had to be paid. So either a restaurant or the person whose credit card it was would have reported it.
Okay, well, I was just going to say, like, don't report, like, dispute the charge, but don't make a police report. That's crazy.
Like, go talk to the person.
I don't know what happened there, though. But I do know, like, whatever it was not worth all this. But it was just one more thing that was stressing her out. And I just wish, like, sometimes I think about, and I guess maybe I block it out because it is, like, very sad. But, like, I just wish, 40-year-old Maura Murray could have told 21-year-old Maura Murray, like, it's going to be okay. The stuff that you're
some way,
so stressed out about, like, really doesn't matter. And you don't need to, no matter what is happening to her in life at that point. And, there was tons of stuff that we know of, probably tons of stuff we don't know of. But the bottom line is she felt like she just couldn't afford to get in trouble again. And I don't know what the laws were in New Hampshire, but I think in a lot of places, like, you'd lose your license for an entire year. She would have trouble, like, maintaining her board exam licenses. She would have all kinds of problems based on that DUI. And so I think she was going to avoid all that by having the car have driven itself. I'm not really sure. I don't really know what the logic there was.
There probably wasn't any, which I think is your point. Like, the logic of reality might have flown out the window in that moment.
Now, so having all that happened, she's had an accident, she was drinking. You should not drink, and people shouldn't drink and drive. It makes you less likely to be able to control your vehicle, which she demonstrated by the accident. And it also makes you not think clearly. And I have no idea how much she drank. I know there was alcohol that was spilt in the vehicle, apparently. But we have to wonder, what are the odds with all of that stuff happening that, like, she then, like, got out of the vehicle and, like, got picked up by Israel Keys, had a tandem driver, like, waiting, and they've never said a word, got hit by a car. Like I said, if she wasn't trying to hide, I feel like she would have just stayed with her vehicle. There's all kinds of things that come up. I just don't see, like, where any of that is accomplishing anything. And the only thing I can think of is she was thinking, I'm just going to hide out for a couple hours until my blood alcohol level is down, and then I'll go back. Except she didn't make it that long.
That totally makes sense to me because I did stupid shit like that at that age.
I honestly feel like, and this is sort of mean to say, but I don't mean anything by it. It's just a neutral observation. I feel like she didn't want to let her dad down again.
Oh, even if it wasn't true long term in the relationship, it would definitely be true in the immediate, like in the.
He just wrecked his car.
Well, he came to help her supposedly, and he was going to help her replace her car, and she wrecked his instead. Maura Murray, I hope their family gets closure, and I hope it's soon. And I can't
Well,
wait to see
and
what happens after.
I feel like I feel like all of it was an accident. She had an accident and she said, I can't get a DUI. I'm going to go and walk this off. And then she could have gotten turned around. And she just couldn't get back. And there's a whole other thing that goes along with that. But there's absolutely, unless some sort of evidence presents itself to the contrary, which would be, I mean, if she's found 20 miles away at Loon Mountain, then, I would reconsider. But because I don't think she walked that far.
No.
But you've got to follow the logical steps here. She was having a very bad day. And she had a very bad weekend that was, preceded by a very bad week. What else could she do except just think? I don't think it would occur to me now it would, but like at certain points in my life, I don't think it would occur to me that like what I'm about to do is going to like indirectly kill me, like going out into the snow in the cold. Would it occur to you?
Today it would. I don't know
But
about
back then, yeah.
I remember like the first time like I was like really acutely aware of that. I was probably 30, maybe older.
Well, for me, it came when I was watching other people, like children.
Yeah.
Because you start thinking, oh, they're cold. Like, oh, yeah, it's really cold, And so that's how I sort of saw it. But like, as far as I'm concerned, I could, without being like, oh, I need to get this other person back in the house to get them warm. I don't know that I would notice it on myself. If I was out walking around, like I might actually.
I definitely wouldn't notice it if I had some alcohol.
Well, right. And the alcohol skews everything. Well, exactly. And that's another thing that factors into it because it would warm you up, so to speak. I mean, it's just a chemical effect, but it's still a real thing. It's a thing that happens. So I just feel like it's a tragic accident. And I mean, can you imagine like if she had been found immediately, like what would all these people have done with their lives?
That is my whole point. That's the name of the podcast, man.
Because
there would have been something else that would have latched onto.
Well, sure. Yeah.
Speaking of case resolutions, like if this bone fragment were to be a thing, this is a case we mentioned. I went back and looked last night. And I'm going to wrap this episode up on this case. But Jacqueline Hernandez, do you remember this case out of Florida?
I do.
So December 22nd, 2007, it was Christmas time in Claremont, Florida. A little girl who at the time was 6 years old, she was 4 foot tall, weighed 70 pounds, named Jacqueline Hernandez, disappeared. She was thought to have been abducted by her non-custodial father, Pablo Henry Hernandez. A felony warrant was issued for him 5 days later on December 27th, 2007. They always put like their descriptions together with the car and like pictures of dad and pictures of her. What's crazy is that apparently 14 years later, they found Jacqueline Hernandez. She's alive and she's well as far as what's being said right this second. That blew me away. It's sort of
that's exactly what I thought was going to happen. It seems like she's 18 now, so she came back. So it looked like she had been taken to Mexico by her father. And I don't know what occurred on the other end of that. I assume it was because the warrant expired, because maybe.
It's probably something like that. He did not come back. They have not found him.
He took her. But now that she's an adult, though, like it I don't know that it becomes moot. He could certainly still be charged with it. Still arrested on it.
It's actually a pretty sweet story. If you don't care, you're right. He can't be arrested. I'm not ignoring what you're saying. I just wanted to.
I was just saying, like with regard to the timing of it, is all. Go ahead.
So, mom, Angelica Vince Salgado, called authorities on September the 2nd. She received a message on social media from someone who claimed to be her daughter, Jacqueline Hernandez, who she had not seen or heard from since 2007, according to the Claremont Police Department. Hernandez was allegedly abducted by her father on December 22nd, 2007. The warrant for kidnapping was issued 5 days later. Hernandez told Salgado that she was in Mexico and requested that she meet her at a point of entry in Laredo, Texas. On September 10th, federal agents intercepted Salgado and Hernandez, and they were able to confirm the young woman, who is now 19 years old, is Salgado's missing daughter. That is crazy.
I'm so happy to hear that, though.
And details regarding Hernandez's life since being taken in 2007 have not been released. Her father's whereabouts are unknown, and it's not clear if Homeland Security Investigations is currently looking for him or if any other authorities are looking for him. I'm very excited that she was found. I figured that would be a really good note to wrap up summer on, with, Jacqueline Hernandez being found.
Yep, it's she sort of found herself, actually.
Thank you for joining us. We are sponsored by LabbratiCreations.com. You can check them out at LabbratiCreations.com, and you can still use the code CRIMEXS for a fun pop pet portrait of your own pet. You can also reach us on Twitter, Instagram at TrueCrimeXS, or you can give us a call if you know anything about any of the cases that we're talking about at 252-365-5593. You can also reach us at Gmail at truecrimexs@gmail.com, and you can check out our website at www.truecrimexs.com. We'll see you next time. This is True Crime XS. So the summer's wrapping up. It's literally by the time this airs, it'll be within a couple of days of the end of summer. So I have this thing where I'm a little disgusted with the true crime community as a whole, as far as social media goes. There's some cases that have been bothering me. Summer Wells was one. Gabby Petito's another one. I can't wrap my head around what the true crime community is doing. And we're sort of starting to discuss, what do we want to do for the fall? What do we want to do for season 3? Do we go back and do some Keys stuff? Is that something where we look at it and we go, this is what we know now? I've got a case in my head that I can't get out, that's not got any media coverage, that I want to go mess with. And then I like doing some of the Louisiana stuff as far as Clay the serial killer goes. That's interesting to me. So all of that comes up here, but I wanted to wrap up what we had just done for the summer in a way, kind of pause some of that stuff so I can go get some records and do some research. I don't think people realize that there's a tremendous amount of stuff that goes into true crime podcasts that keep going. And one of those things is Meg. And it's also, there are certain resources. It's not even like a financial thing. It can be hard to get certain pieces of information. I've run into this with Israel Keys. I still have a pending decision on a couple of cases with 2 different states' attorney generals where the local people didn't want to give me what I wanted, so they pick it up, and then those people just take their time because it's considered to be decided, and so that becomes an appellate thing. So it's an appeal. Basically, what you expect from those cases is that they're going to say the same thing that was said at the lower level. It doesn't matter. Right now, I'm so upset with how the true crime community handles things. I watch these Facebook groups, and I guess they're subreddits. I'm not a regular Reddit person, but I do look at what's going on there in terms of true crime. You can hear sort of how I view that by the way that I've sourced it in the past. There are some brilliant people in there, but I'm really upset with how the true crime community is. It's like everybody has nothing else to do but true crime right now. And there's so many podcasts out there that cropped up during the pandemic And that's great. That's awesome for the industry. It's more competition. It's more complicated. But right now, I want to wrap up sort of some pieces of true crime news and talk about that. Have like a summer wrap episode. So that's what this is. This is a summer wrap.
Oh my, you got that hotter than a summertime in July. Time magic, and I got to have it. I got to say it again. Oh my, you got that hotter than a summertime in July. Time magic, and I got to have it. Ooh baby, you're my sugar dripping, chocolate covered waffle cone. No, I can't leave that boy alone. Need a taste up in the morning. You got a girl just jonesing. Need a fix from my favorite type of candy store. Got me shaking, going out of control. Let me have a little something. You know I'm hooked up on that loving. Let's rock, roll, escape. Let the stress just slide away. Oh baby, no, don't ever let me go. No, don't ever let me go. Champagne, let's celebrate. Let that old school record play. Oh baby, no, don't ever let me go. No, don't ever let me go. Oh my, you got that hotter than a summertime in July. Time magic, and I got to have it. I got to say it again. Oh my, you got that hotter than a summertime in July. Time magic, and I got to have it. Ooh, baby, you got me feeling like I'm overheating in the shade. There's a rise up in the centigrade. Need a taste to keep me going. You know you keep a girl jonesing. I need a hit, keep it coming, ain't no antidote. One kiss, that's all she wrote. I'm an addict, I confess it. Ooh, this love is a blessing. So let's rock, roll, escape. Let the stress just slide away. Oh baby, no, don't ever let me go. No, don't ever let me go. Champagne, let's celebrate.